They say you know your worth when no one's watching. But what happens when everyone's watching, and still, no one sees you? Tonight, at the most brutal social gathering in Ironvale's history, Elara Vance will discover that being invisible isn't weakness, it's preparation, because the man who shattered her heart just announced his engagement to her sister. The room is laughing. Her family is silent. And somewhere in the shadows, a man who's never needed anyone is about to realize he needs her. This is the story of the girl no one saw, until she made damn sure they couldn't look away. Stick around, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. You won't believe how this ends. The ballroom smelled like expensive lies. Elara stood near the back wall, half hidden by a marble column that had probably cost more than her family's entire yearly income. Around her, Ironvale's elite moved like sharks in silk, circling, testing, looking for blood in the water. The chandeliers overhead threw fractured light across faces she'd known her whole life, faces that had stopped seeing her years ago. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. Oh, she had an invitation. Her name was on the guest list, right below her sister's, written in that perfect calligraphy that made everything look more important than it was. But invitations didn't mean inclusion. Not in Ironvale. Not when your family's money came from trade instead of land, when your father had built his fortune from nothing instead of inheriting it from men who'd stolen it 3 generations back. The Vance family was new money, which in Ironvale meant they were practically beggars with fancy shoes. Elara smoothed her hands down the front of her dress. Deep green, simple lines, nothing that would draw attention. Her mother had wanted her to wear the blue one, the one with the crystals sewn into the bodice that caught light like diamonds. "You need to shine tonight," she'd said, her voice tight with the kind of desperation that made Elara's chest hurt. "Your sister will be radiant. You can't just fade." But Elara had chosen the green, because shining required an audience willing to look, and she'd learned a long time ago that most people had already decided what they'd see when they looked at her. Nothing. "Is that Elara Vance?" The voice cut through the noise like a blade, sharp and delighted in its cruelty. Elara didn't turn. She knew that voice. Cordelia Ashmont, daughter of the territorial magistrate, a woman whose entire existence revolved around being seen and making sure others were not. "I didn't think she'd actually show," Cordelia continued, her voice carrying the way voices do when the speaker wants to be overheard. "After what happened with Marcus, I'd have hidden in my room for a month." Laughter rippled outward, polite, restrained, but unmistakable. Elara's fingers tightened around the stem of her untouched champagne glass. The crystal was cold, solid, real. She focused on that instead of the heat climbing up her neck. Marcus. The name alone was enough to split her open. She'd loved him, quietly, carefully, the way you love something you're certain you don't deserve. For 2 years she'd actually believed, that he saw her, that beneath his polished charm and easy smiles, there was something real, something honest. He'd told her she was different, that she understood him in ways others couldn't. He'd held her hand in his father's garden and said her name like it meant something. And then, 3 weeks ago, he'd announced his engagement to her sister. Not in private, not with any warning. At a family dinner, with both sets of parents present, he'd stood and taken Serena's hand and said the words that had torn Elara's world into pieces, so small, she wasn't sure she'd ever find all of them. "I'm the luckiest man in Ironvale." Serena had cried. Beautiful, delicate tears that made her eyes shine like stars. Their mother had clasped her hands together and smiled so wide Elara thought her face might crack. Their father had shaken Marcus's hand with the firm grip of a man who'd just secured his family's future. And Elara had sat there, frozen, while the man she loved looked at her sister like she hung the moon. No one had asked if she was all right. No one had even looked. "Where is she?" Another voice chimed in. Beatrice Farrow, one of Cordelia's ever-present shadows. "I don't see her." "Exactly my point," Cordelia said, and the laughter came again, louder this time. Elara forced herself to breathe, to stay still, to let the noise wash over her like rain until it didn't matter anymore. This was survival. In Ironvale, you learned early that showing weakness was the same as lying down in the road and waiting for the carriages to run you over. So you stood up. You smiled. You pretended the things that cut you open were just paper cuts, barely worth noticing. She was good at pretending. Elara. The voice was soft, tentative, threaded with guilt. Elara didn't need to turn to know who it was. Serena. Her sister stepped into view, a vision in pale blue silk that shimmered like water in sunlight. Her blonde hair was pinned in an elaborate style that probably took hours, studded with tiny white flowers that looked like they'd been spun from moonlight. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made people stop talking when she entered a room. The kind that made men stupid and women calculating. "I've been looking for you," Serena said, her blue eyes wide with concern that might have been genuine. It was hard to tell. Serena had been performing innocence for so long that Elara wasn't sure her sister knew where the act ended and the truth began. "Well, you found me." Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. Small victories. Serena's brow furrowed, a delicate crease that somehow made her look more sympathetic. "Are you all right? You've been standing back here all evening. People are asking—" "Let them ask." "Elara." Serena's hand reached out, touched her arm. The gesture was gentle, the kind of touch you'd give a wounded animal. "I know this is hard, but Marcus and we didn't plan for this to happen. It just happened, right?" Elara pulled her arm back, not sharply, just enough. "Love at first sight. How convenient that it happened after 2 years of him and me." Pain flashed across Serena's face. Real or performed, Elara couldn't tell anymore. "It wasn't like that. You and Marcus were never— you never officially—" "Courted?" The word tasted bitter. "No, we didn't, because he said he wanted to wait until he'd secured his position at his father's firm, until he could approach father properly, until everything was perfect." Elara laughed, a short, hollow sound. "Turns out he was just waiting for the better option. That's not fair, isn't it?" Serena's eyes filled with tears, quick, pretty tears, that made her look vulnerable instead of weak. "I love him, Elara. I know you don't want to hear that, but I do. And he loves me. What was I supposed to do? Turn him away because you and he had whatever it was you had?" Whatever it was. 2 years reduced to 3 words and a dismissive gesture. "You could have told me," Elara said quietly. "Before the dinner, before the announcement. You could have warned me." "I tried." Serena's voice broke. "I came to your room twice, but you were always out or busy, or you knocked once for 10 seconds. Then you left. Because I was scared." Serena's volume rose, drawing glances from the nearest cluster of guests. She immediately lowered her voice, leaning in. "I was scared of hurting you, of ruining everything. Marcus said it would be easier if we just announced it cleanly, without all the drama beforehand." Of course he did. Marcus hated mess, hated complications. It was one of the things she'd loved about him, his ability to see through chaos and find the cleanest path forward. She just hadn't realized she'd be the mess he cut away. "I should go," Elara said. "Congratulations, by the way. You two will be very happy." "Don't do that. Don't just shut down and walk away like you always do." "Like I always do?" Elara's voice sharpened. "What else am I supposed to do, Serena? Make a scene? Cry in public? Fight you for him?" "I don't know." Serena's composure cracked, just a little. "But something other than this. This nothingness. You act like nothing affects you, like you don't care about anything, and it's infuriating because I know that's not true." "Maybe it is true." Elara met her sister's eyes. "Maybe I've just finally learned that caring doesn't change anything." Before Serena could respond, a ripple of energy moved through the room. Voices lowered, heads turned. The crowd near the entrance began to part, a physical wave of deference and curiosity. Someone important had arrived. Elara followed the gazes and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Marcus. He stood in the entrance, tall and perfectly groomed in a charcoal suit that had definitely been tailored just for tonight. His dark hair was swept back, his smile easy and confident as he greeted the people who immediately swarmed him. Behind him, his father, William Thorne, one of Ironvale's most powerful merchants, clapped him on the shoulder with obvious pride. Marcus had always carried himself like someone who knew exactly where he belonged in the world. Top tier. Center stage. Untouchable. And beside him, holding his arm with possessive grace, was Serena. No. Serena was already here, standing next to Elara. Alara's brain stuttered, trying to reconcile what she was seeing. Then she realized Serena had slipped away. In the seconds Elara had been lost in thought, her sister had crossed the room and taken her place at Marcus's side so smoothly it looked choreographed. Maybe it was. They made a stunning pair. Everyone could see it, the beautiful blonde daughter of ambitious traders and the handsome heir to a merchant empire. A perfect merger of beauty, wealth, and social climbing. Marcus's eyes swept the room, acknowledging greetings, soaking in the attention. Then his gaze landed on Elara. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, maybe. Or discomfort. But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. He smiled, polite, distant, and turned back to the crowd around him. That was it. 2 years. And she got a polite smile. The kind you'd give a stranger. Elara set her champagne glass on a passing servant's tray and turned away, toward the far side of the ballroom where tall windows overlooked the street. She needed air, space, anything but the suffocating press of people who looked through her like she was glass. Running away? The voice came from her left, low, rough around the edges, nothing like the polished tones that dominated this room. Elara turned. A man stood a few feet away, half in shadow, watching her with an intensity that made her spine straighten instinctively. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that was expensive but practical. No decorative buttons or unnecessary flourishes. His face was all hard angles, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, and his eyes were the color of slate under storm clouds. She didn't recognize him, and in Ironvale, that was unusual. "I'm not running," she said. "I'm strategically repositioning." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "That what we're calling it?" "Do I know you?" "No." He shifted, stepping slightly more into the light. "But I know you." Alarm bells rang in Elara's head. She dealt with enough entitled men in this town to recognize the tone. If this is some kind of game, it's not! He held up a hand, a gesture that was more calming than defensive. "I'm Ronan Hale. I've been doing business with your father for the past 6 months. Shipping contracts, mostly. He mentioned he had 2 daughters." Ronan Hale. The name clicked into place. She'd heard her father mention it, a frontier lord from the Northern Territories, one of the few men who'd managed to carve out profitable trade routes through lands most people considered too dangerous to bother with. "Rough," her father had said. "Not someone you'd invite to dinner parties, but reliable when it came to getting goods through hostile territory." "My father talks too much," Elara said. "He talks about 1 daughter too much," Ronan corrected. "The other one, he barely mentions." Elara felt her jaw tighten. "Let me guess. The pretty one gets all the stories." "The easy one does." Ronan's gaze was steady, unflinching. "People like easy stories. The beautiful daughter who's going to marry well and make everyone proud. That's simple, clean, doesn't require anyone to think too hard. And I'm not an easy story. No." He paused. "You're the interesting one." Elara laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You don't know me. I know you've been standing against that column for an hour, watching a room full of people who don't see you. I know the man who just walked in with your sister used to be yours. I know you haven't touched your drink, which means you're staying sharp when everyone else is getting stupid. And I know that every time someone laughs in your direction, you don't flinch." He tilted his head slightly. "That takes practice." She stared at him, unsure whether to be offended or impressed. "You've been watching me. I watch everything. It's how I stay alive in my line of work." "And what line of work is that exactly?" "Survival." Ronan's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "I move goods through territory where most people wouldn't last a week. You learn to read people fast or you die slow." Sounds grim. "It's honest." He glanced toward the center of the room, where Marcus and Serena were now surrounded by well-wishers. "More honest than this." Elara followed his gaze, watched her sister laugh at something Marcus said, watched him lean in and kiss her temple with practiced tenderness, watched the crowd coo and applaud like they were witnessing something sacred instead of strategic. "You think it's fake," she said quietly. "I think it's convenient." Ronan looked back at her. "Your sister is beautiful and connected. His family needs those connections. Your father gets access to better trade circles. Everyone wins. Except me. You didn't want to win that game anyway." Elara's head snapped toward him. What's that supposed to mean? It means Marcus Thorne is a coward who chose safety over substance. And you're better off knowing that now than 10 years from now, when you've wasted your life trying to be enough for someone who was never going to see you. Ronan's voice was blunt, almost cruel in its directness. You loved him. I get it. But he didn't love you back. Not really. Because if he had, he'd be standing next to you right now instead of performing for strangers. The words hit like stones, hard, accurate, painful. You don't pull punches, do you? Elara said. No point. Life's too short for soft lies. He paused. You want me to stop talking? She should say yes. Should walk away from this strange, blunt man who looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving instead of a problem worth avoiding. But she didn't. No, she heard herself say. Keep going. Ronan's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but something close. Respect, maybe. All right. He gestured toward the windows. Then let's get out of this cage before you suffocate. I can't just leave. Your family is busy celebrating your sister's engagement. They won't notice you're gone. His voice softened, just slightly. And even if they do, what are they going to say? That you weren't enthusiastic enough about watching the man you loved choose someone else? Elara looked at him, really looked, saw the scars, the calluses on his hands, the way he stood like someone who'd learned to carry weight most people couldn't imagine. He wasn't offering her romance or rescue. He wasn't promising anything except honesty. And right now, honesty sounded better than everything else in this room combined. 5 minutes, she said. Then I come back. 5 minutes? Ronan nodded toward the side exit. There's a balcony off the west corridor. No one uses it during these things. You'll be able to breathe. They moved through the crowd together, separately really, because Ronan didn't offer his arm or make any show of escorting her. He just walked and she followed, and somehow that felt more genuine than any of the performed courtesies she'd endured all night. The corridor was blessedly quiet. Their footsteps echoed against marble floors as they passed oil paintings of Ironvale's founding families. Men in stiff collars and women in impossible corsets, all staring down with expressions that suggested they'd died without ever experiencing joy. Ronan pushed open a narrow door, and cold air rushed in. The balcony was small, barely large enough for 2 people, overlooking the street below. Ironvale spread out beneath them, gas lamps flickering in the darkness, the distant sound of horses and wheels and voices. It was real, messy, alive in a way the ballroom wasn't. Elara leaned against the stone railing and closed her eyes, letting the wind pull at her carefully pinned hair. She didn't care. For the first time all night, she didn't care. Better? Ronan asked from behind her. Yes. They stood in silence for a moment. Then, why did you really bring me out here? Elara asked without turning. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. No, I don't. Ronan moved to stand beside her, his arms crossed over his chest. But I recognize something when I see it. And what's that? Someone who's tired of pretending. He looked at her, his storm gray eyes serious. You're not invisible because people don't see you, Elara. You're invisible because you've made yourself that way. You've decided it's safer to be background than to be seen and rejected. Elara's breath caught. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. I spent the first 20 years of my life being told I was nothing, too rough, too brutal, not refined enough for polite society. So I stopped trying to fit. I went north into territory where being polite gets you killed and being brutal keeps you breathing. And I built something, not because anyone believed in me, because I stopped waiting for permission. It's not the same. Isn't it? Ronan turned to face her fully. You think I don't see what's happening in there? You're waiting for someone to notice you, to choose you, to decide you're worth something. But here's the truth, Elara. No one's going to do that. Not because you're not worth it, but because people are lazy. They take what's easy and ignore what requires effort. So what am I supposed to do? The question came out sharper than she intended. Just stop caring? Stop hoping things will change? No. Ronan shook his head. You decide things are going to change, and then you change them yourself. That's easy for you to say. You're a man. You can go north and build an empire and no one questions it. I'm trapped here watching my sister marry the man I loved, knowing that tomorrow I'll wake up and nothing will be different. Then make it different. How? Elara's voice cracked just a little. She hated that. Hated the weakness. Tell me how, because I've tried. I've tried being smarter, kinder, prettier, quieter. I've tried everything, and none of it matters because at the end of the day, I'm still just the girl no one chose. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Stop trying to be chosen. Start choosing yourself." The words hung in the air between them. "I don't know what that means," Elara whispered. "It means you stop waiting for Marcus Thorne to realize he made a mistake. Stop waiting for your family to notice you exist. Stop waiting for this town to decide you're worth their attention." Ronan's voice was low, intense. "You want to matter? Then matter. Do something so undeniable that they can't ignore you even if they try." "Like what?" "I don't know yet." He smiled then, a real smile, crooked and surprisingly warm. "But I have a feeling you'll figure it out." From inside, the sound of music shifted. The announcement. They'd be calling Marcus and Serena forward any moment now, asking them to share their story, to let everyone bask in their perfect love. Elara's stomach turned. "I should go back," she said, but she didn't move. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. If I don't, they'll talk. They'll say I couldn't handle it, that I'm bitter or weak or—" "Let them talk." Ronan's hand moved just slightly, and for a moment she thought he was going to touch her. But he didn't. He just held her gaze, steady and sure. "You keep acting like their opinions matter, but the only opinion that matters is yours. And right now, I'm asking you, what do you want?" What did she want? The question was so simple it was devastating. She wanted to go back in time, to never meet Marcus, to never believe him when he said she was special. She wanted her sister to have been honest, her family to have cared. She wanted to matter to someone the way she'd mattered to herself before this town taught her she didn't. But those were impossible wants, childish wants. So what did she want that she could actually have? "I want to stop hurting," she said finally. "I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning while everyone else is breathing just fine." Ronan nodded slowly. "That's a start." "Is it?" "Yeah." He pushed off from the railing, straightening. "Because once you know what you don't want, you can start figuring out what you do." Inside, applause erupted. The announcement had been made. Marcus and Serena were official, sealed with champagne toasts and society's blessing. Elara closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Ronan was watching her with something that looked almost like understanding. "You're going to be all right," he said. Not a question, a statement. "How do you know?" "Because you're still standing." He turned toward the door. "That's more than most people manage." He left her there, on the balcony, with the cold wind and the distant noise of a celebration she wasn't part of. And for the first time all night, Elara didn't feel invisible. She felt angry. And anger, she was learning, was better than nothing at all. The anger lasted through the night and into the next morning, settling in Elara's chest like hot coals that refused to cool. She woke before dawn, dressed in the dark, and left the house before her family stirred. The streets of Ironvale were quiet at this hour. Shopkeepers rolling up shutters, laborers heading toward the docks, the city still half asleep and honest in its exhaustion. She walked without destination, her boots clicking against cobblestones slick with morning dew. The air smelled like rain and coal smoke, that particular Ironvale mix that clung to everything. By the time she reached the merchant district, the sun was bleeding red across the horizon, and her legs ached from the pace she'd set. She stopped in front of her father's warehouse, a squat brick building with Vance and Company painted in fading letters above the door. The place where her father had built his fortune, one shipment at a time, clawing his way up from nothing into something people still looked down on. New money, dirty money, money that smelled like sweat instead of inheritance. Elara pulled out the key she'd stolen from her father's desk years ago and let herself in. The warehouse was dark, filled with the scent of leather and tea and spices from places she'd never see. Crates stacked to the ceiling, inventory logs scattered across her father's desk. The organized chaos of a business always one bad season away from collapse. She'd spent her childhood here, helping count shipments while Serena attended etiquette lessons, learning the roots, the margins, the brutal arithmetic of survival in a town that wanted you to fail. Her father had never said it, but she knew. He'd wanted a son, someone to inherit the business, to carry the Vance name forward. Instead, he got two daughters, one beautiful and marriageable, one useful but unmarketable. Guess which one mattered more? Elara sat at the desk and pulled out the ledgers. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly. Answers, maybe, or distraction. Something to make the noise in her head stop long enough to think clearly. The numbers steadied her. They always had. While Serena learned how to smile and curtsy and make small talk that meant nothing, Elara learned how to read contracts, spot discrepancies, negotiate with suppliers who thought they could cheat her father because he came from nothing. She was good at it. Better than her father, if she was honest. She saw patterns he missed, opportunities he overlooked. But suggesting improvements meant overstepping, meant acting like she had a right to opinions beyond what dress to wear and which man to smile at. She was deep in last quarter's shipping reports when the door opened behind her. Elara spun, heart hammering, expecting her father, or worse, one of his suppliers looking to steal. Ronan Hale stood in the doorway, blocking the early light. He looked exactly like he had the night before. Dark clothes, hard edges, a presence that filled the space without trying. "You're up early," he said. Elara's pulse slowed. "How did you know I was here?" "I didn't. I came to check on a delayed shipment your father was supposed to confirm yesterday." Ronan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" "Working." "At dawn? After the night you had?" Elara set down her pen, meeting his gaze. "I couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be useful." Ronan moved closer, glancing at the open ledgers. His eyes tracked the numbers with the quick efficiency of someone who knew what he was looking at. "You handle the books?" "Sometimes. When my father's too busy or too tired." She hesitated. "Or when I need to think." "Numbers help you think?" "They make sense. They don't lie or change their mind or—" She stopped, realizing how much she was revealing to a man she barely knew. But Ronan just nodded. "Fair enough." He pulled out a chair and sat across from her, uninvited but not unwelcome. For a moment they sat in silence, the only sound the distant rumble of cargo wagons passing on the street outside. "Your father doesn't know what he has," Ronan said finally. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means he's got a daughter who can run his business better than he can, and he's too blind to see it because she's not the one people want to look at." Elara's jaw tightened. "You don't know that." "I know numbers. I know logistics. And I know when someone understands supply chains the way you clearly do, they're wasted doing it in secret." Ronan leaned back, studying her. "How long have you been fixing his mistakes?" "I don't— 3 years? 4? Elara said nothing. "He takes credit for it, I'm guessing. The improved routes, the better contracts. Probably tells himself he trained you well." "He did train me. Maybe. But training and trusting aren't the same thing." Ronan's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "If he trusted you, your name would be on the door next to his." The words hit harder than they should have, because he was right. Her father praised her work in private and never mentioned her in public. She was the invisible engine keeping the business running while he played the part of self-made success. "Why are you here?" Elara asked, changing the subject before the anger could climb back up her throat. "Really? You could have sent someone for the shipment confirmation." "I could have." Ronan stood, moving to the window. Morning light cut across his face, highlighting the scar through his eyebrow. "But I wanted to see if you'd show up." "Why would I?" "Because last night you were drowning, and people who are drowning either sink or swim. I wanted to see which one you'd do." "And?" He looked at her, something unreadable in those storm-gray eyes. "You're here, working, surviving. That's swimming. Barely. Barely's enough." Ronan crossed his arms. "I have a proposition for you." Elara's guard went up immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "The kind where we both get something we need." He paused. "I'm expanding my northern routes, opening a new supply line through the Ashmark territories. It's dangerous, but profitable, very profitable." "What does that have to do with me?" "I need someone who understands logistics. Someone smart enough to manage inventory across hostile territory without getting robbed blind. Someone who can negotiate with suppliers who think women are easy marks. Ronan held her gaze. I need someone like you. Elara stared at him. You want to hire me? Yes. To do what exactly? Run the Ashmark operations. Full autonomy, full profit share. 20% of net after costs. The number hung in the air between them. 20% of a northern trade route was more money than her father made in a good year. More money than most people in Ironvale saw in a lifetime. You're insane, Elara said. Probably. Ronan didn't smile. But I'm also serious. I've been watching your father's operation for 6 months. The improvements started showing up about a year ago. Better route optimization, tighter inventory control, fewer losses to theft. That wasn't him. That was you. You don't know that. I asked around quietly. People talk when you pay them to. Your father's workers know who's really running things. Ronan stepped closer. So here's the question. Are you going to spend the rest of your life making your father look good while he marries off your sister and forgets you exist? Or are you going to do something about it? Elara's heart was pounding now. I can't just leave. My family doesn't see you. His voice was blunt, cutting. They see a useful pair of hands, a backup plan. But they don't see you. And you know it, or you wouldn't be hiding in this warehouse at dawn trying to make numbers tell you you matter. That's not... It is. Ronan wasn't being cruel, just honest. Painfully, devastatingly honest. You want to prove you're worth something? Come north with me. Build something that's yours, not your father's, not your family's, yours. The offer sat between them, impossible and tempting in equal measure. I need time to think, Elara said. You've got a week. Ronan pulled a card from his pocket and set it on the desk. Heavy paper, expensive ink, an address in the Northern District. That's where I'm staying. If you decide you're tired of being invisible, come find me. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. For what it's worth, he said without looking back, Marcus Thorne is an idiot, and the people in that ballroom are cowards. But you're not. You're just scared. And that's fine. Being scared means you're paying attention. He glanced over his shoulder. Question is whether you're going to let the fear run you or you're going to run through it. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that echoed in the warehouse silence. Elara sat alone with the ledgers and the impossible offer and the dangerous seed of hope taking root in her chest. She didn't go home until noon. By then, her mother was frantic, her father annoyed, and Serena was sitting in the parlor surrounded by wedding magazines and smiling like she'd won the lottery. Maybe she had. Where have you been? Her mother's voice was sharp, strained. Catherine Vance was a beautiful woman going gray at the temples, desperately clinging to relevance in a town that had already moved past her. We've been worried sick. I was at the warehouse, working. Working? Her father looked up from his newspaper, bushy eyebrows raised. On what? The Henderson shipment. The numbers were off. I fixed them. Henry Vance grunted, returning to his paper. Should have told me. Nearly sent someone down to handle it. I handled it. Good girl. The dismissal was casual, automatic. Good girl. Like she was a dog who'd fetched the right stick. Elara's fingers curled into fists at her sides. Elara, darling, sit down. Her mother gestured to the settee next to Serena. We need to discuss the wedding. Serena wants you in the bridal party, of course. Of course. Elara remained standing. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Serena's smile faltered. Why not? You're my sister. Exactly. I'm your sister, who was in love with your fiancé for 2 years. The words came out flat, emotionless. Don't you think having me stand up there while you marry him might be awkward? Silence crashed through the room like dropped glass. Catherine's face went white. Elara. It's fine, Mother. Serena set down her magazine, her voice taking on that patient, condescending tone she used when explaining simple things to simple people. Marcus and I talked about this. We know it's difficult for you, but we can't let the past dictate our future. We're a family, and family supports each other. Does it? Elara heard herself say. Is that what we're doing? Supporting each other? What's that supposed to mean? Her father's voice had an edge now. It means no one asked me how I felt. No one warned me. You all just made your decisions and expected me to smile and go along with it, because that's what I do. I'm good at going along with things." Elara's voice was rising, the anger she'd been containing finally finding an exit. "But what if I don't want to anymore?" "Elara," her mother stood, moving toward her. "I know you're upset." "Upset?" The word came out as a laugh. "I'm not upset, Mother. I'm furious. I'm humiliated. I'm invisible unless you need me to count shipments or stand in wedding photos to prove we're all one big happy family." "That is enough." Her father's newspaper slammed down on the side table. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" "Tell me, Father. When was the last time you introduced me to a client? When was the last time you told anyone I'm the reason your business is still running?" Henry's face reddened. "I trained you, and I improved everything you taught me. But you won't admit that because then you'd have to explain why the woman running your operations isn't on the payroll. You have a home, food, security. I have invisibility, and you call it gratitude." The room was so quiet, Elara could hear the clock ticking on the mantel, counting down seconds that felt like hours. "I think," Catherine said carefully, "we should all take a moment to calm down." "I'm calm." Elara looked at her sister. "Serena, I hope you and Marcus are very happy. I mean that. But I won't stand in your wedding. I won't smile for photographs. I won't pretend everything is fine when we all know it's not." "Then what will you do?" Serena's voice was small now, uncertain. "I don't know yet." Elara turned toward the stairs. "But I'll figure it out, without any of you." She made it to her room before the shaking started, locked the door, pressed her back against it, and slid down until she was sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest. What had she just done? She'd burned bridges, made enemies of her family, isolated herself in a town where family connections were everything. And for what? Pride? Anger? The slim hope that maybe, possibly, she could be something more than background noise? The card Ronan had given her sat on her dresser, white against dark wood. An address, an offer, an escape, or a mistake. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she packed. Not everything. That would be too obvious. Just the essentials. Clothes, documents, the small amount of money she'd saved from wages her father occasionally remembered to pay her. By morning, a single trunk sat hidden in her closet, ready. For what? She still wasn't sure. The week passed in cold silence. Her family stopped trying to talk to her. Serena's wounded looks gave way to resigned acceptance. Her father threw himself into work. Her mother took to her room with headaches that everyone knew were disappointment repackaged. Elara spent the days at the warehouse, ostensibly working, mostly thinking. She could stay, apologize, smooth things over and fade back into the background where everyone wanted her. It would be easy, familiar, safe. But safety was starting to feel like suffocation. On the 6th day, she made her decision. She found Ronan's address just after dawn, a narrow building in the northern district wedged between a blacksmith and a freight office. The kind of place serious men conducted serious business without the polish Ironvale's elite preferred. She knocked. Ronan answered, wearing shirt sleeves and holding a cup of coffee, looking unsurprised to see her. "You came," he said. "I came." Second thoughts? "About 1,000. Elara met his eyes. "But I'm here anyway." He stepped aside, gesturing her in. The space was sparse, maps on the walls, a desk covered in papers, a narrow staircase leading up to what she assumed were living quarters. It smelled like leather and ink and something sharper. Gunpowder, maybe. "Coffee?" Ronan offered. "No, I need to know what I'm actually agreeing to." Elara stayed standing, arms crossed. "You say 20%. What's the catch?" "The catch is you'll be operating in territory where the wrong word to the wrong person gets you killed, where supply lines run through land disputed by 3 different factions, all of whom would rather burn your cargo than let it reach the next town. Where being a woman from Ironvale makes you a target twice over, once for being female, once for being soft." "You think I'm soft?" "No." Ronan set down his coffee. "I think you're untested. There's a difference. Soft means you break. Untested means you haven't had reason to be hard yet." He paused. "The North will give you plenty of reasons." "And if I fail?" then you lose your 20%, and I lose a supply line. And we both learn something about bad decisions. Elara looked at the maps on the wall, vast territories marked with routes and symbols she didn't recognize. When would I leave? 3 days. I've got a convoy heading north to establish the initial supply depot. You'd go with them, set up operations, and report back monthly. Monthly? I'd be gone for months, maybe longer. Ronan's voice was steady. This isn't a day trip to the countryside, Elara. This is frontier work. It's isolation and danger and long stretches where the only people you can trust are the ones you hire yourself. If you're not ready for that, tell me now. She should walk away, should go home and apologize and accept that some lives are small by design, should choose the safe path, the expected path, the path that led to marriage and children and slow, quiet invisibility. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm ready. Something shifted in Ronan's expression. Not quite a smile, more like recognition. All right. He moved to the desk, pulled out a contract. Read this. Every word. If you sign, you're committed. I don't tolerate quitters. Elara took the papers. The contract was thorough. Profit splits, operational authority, liability clauses, terms of termination. It was fair. More than fair. It was also terrifying. She signed. Ronan countersigned, then extended his hand. Welcome to the frontier. His grip was firm, calloused, the handshake of someone who'd built things with his own hands. I'm going to disappoint you, Elara said quietly. Probably. Ronan released her hand. But I doubt you'll bore me, and that's worth something. She left his office with a copy of the contract and a sick, excited feeling in her stomach. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare for a life she couldn't imagine with a man she barely knew in a place that would likely chew her up and spit her out. She went home and found her mother in the parlor, sewing. I'm leaving, Elara said without preamble. Catherine's hands stilled. Leaving? To go where? North. I've taken a position managing a trade route through the Ashmark territories. Her mother's face went pale. That's insane. Those territories are... Elara, people die up there. People die everywhere. At least this way I'll die doing something that matters. And what about your family? Your sister's wedding? I'm sure Serena will survive without me. Elara kept her voice level. I've already made arrangements. I leave in 3 days. Your father will never allow it. Father doesn't own me. The words felt powerful. True. None of you do. Catherine set down her sewing, hands trembling slightly. Is this about Marcus? Because if you're doing this to prove some kind of point, this isn't about Marcus. It's about me. It's about spending 24 years being treated like furniture and finally realizing I deserve better. We never treated you like... Didn't you? Elara's voice was quiet now, almost sad. When was the last time you asked what I wanted, what I needed? When was the last time any of you saw me as anything other than Serena's less interesting sister or father's unpaid bookkeeper? Catherine's eyes filled with tears. We love you. Maybe, but you don't see me, and I'm tired of trying to make you. She went upstairs and finished packing. That night, Serena came to her room, knocked softly, and let herself in without waiting for an answer. You're really going, she said, not quite a question. Yes. Serena sat on the edge of the bed, fingers twisting in her lap. I don't understand. Why now? Why like this? Because if I don't leave now, I never will. But the North, Elara, it's dangerous. People disappear up there. Good. Maybe I need to disappear for a while. Elara folded another shirt, not looking at her sister. Maybe when I come back, I'll be someone worth seeing. I see you. Do you? Elara finally looked up. Really? Or do you just see the person who makes your life easier? Who doesn't complain when you take the things she wants? Serena flinched. That's not fair. It's honest. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Serena said, voice small, I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. That's what makes it worse. Elara's anger was fading, leaving only exhaustion. You didn't mean to. You just did. Because not hurting me never crossed your mind as something that mattered. I'm sorry. I know. Elara closed her trunk. But sorry doesn't change anything. I'm still leaving. Serena stood, moved toward the door, then stopped. Will you come back? I don't know. What should I tell people? Tell them the truth. That I left to build something of my own. That I finally got tired of being invisible. Elara managed a small, sad smile. Tell them I ran away with a dangerous man to survive in hostile territory. At least that's more interesting than being the girl no one chose. Serena left without another word. 3 days later, Elara stood at the northern edge of Ironvale with a single trunk and a contract that might be the smartest or stupidest thing she'd ever signed. The convoy was already assembled, 6 wagons loaded with supplies, a dozen armed guards who looked at her with barely concealed skepticism, and Ronan, mounted on a scarred gray horse that looked like it had survived more fights than its rider. Last chance, Ronan said, riding over. Once we leave city limits, there's no turning back until the job's done. Elara looked back at Ironvale, the city that had raised her, overlooked her, and ultimately taught her that being invisible was worse than being gone. I'm not turning back, she said. Ronan extended his hand, pulling her up behind him on the horse. She'd ride with him until they reached the first supply post, where she'd be given her own mount. The convoy lurched forward, and Elara Vance, the girl no one saw, rode north into territory that killed people for being weak. She'd either come back stronger, or she wouldn't come back at all. Behind them, Ironvale's spires disappeared into morning mist. Nobody came to watch her leave. Nobody came to watch her leave. The words repeated in Elara's head for the first 3 days on the road, a rhythm matching the horse's gait as they pushed deeper into territory that grew wilder with each mile. The convoy moved in tight formation, wagons flanked by armed guards who scanned the tree line with the paranoia of men who'd survived by not trusting shadows. Elara rode beside Ronan now, mounted on a sturdy bay mare that one of the guards had grudgingly surrendered after she'd proven she could stay in the saddle. The man, a scarred veteran named Cade with a missing ear and suspicious eyes, had made his opinion clear. She'll slow us down, he told Ronan that first night, voice low, but not low enough. City girl's got no business out here. First sign of trouble, she'll panic, and we'll all pay for it. Ronan had looked at Cade for a long moment, then said simply, then make sure there's no trouble. It wasn't a defense, it was an order. And somehow that felt more honest than any reassurance could have been. The north was different, not just colder, though the temperature dropped noticeably each day, but rawer. The roads turned from cobblestone to packed dirt to barely there trails that wound through forests so dense the sunlight came through in fractured pieces. They passed abandoned homesteads, burned-out way stations, unmarked graves that made the guards grip their rifles tighter. This was disputed territory, land that 3 factions claimed and none controlled. The Ashmark Collective to the west, former miners who'd banded together when the companies abandoned them. The Crown Brotherhood to the east, self-styled nobility who thought violence made them legitimate. And the free territories in between, settlers and survivors who just wanted to be left alone to scratch out whatever living they could from unforgiving land. All 3 groups hated traitors. Traitors meant outside influence. Outside influence meant change. And change, in a place where survival was already a daily battle, was the same as death. You're quiet, Ronan said on the 4th day, breaking hours of silence. Elara glanced at him. He rode like he'd been born on horseback, comfortable, alert, completely at home in wilderness that made her skin crawl with unease. Thinking. About? Whether I made a mistake. Did you? I don't know yet. She shifted in the saddle, muscles aching from days of riding. Your men don't trust me. They don't trust anyone. It's how they stay alive. They think I'm weak. You are weak, by their standards. Ronan's voice held no judgment, just fact. You've never shot anyone. Never gone 3 days without food because the supply line got cut. Never had to decide which wounded man gets the last bandage because there's not enough to go around. So why bring me? Because weak and useless aren't the same thing. You'll learn to survive. Question is whether you'll learn fast enough. He looked at her then, storm gray eyes unreadable. I'm betting you will. And if you're wrong, then I'm out 20% and you're dead. We both lose. The casualness of it should have scared her. Instead, it was almost comforting. No false promises, no gentle lies, just the brutal arithmetic of frontier survival. They reached Ashmark Station on the 6th day, a fortified trading post that sat at the convergence of 3 supply routes. Wooden walls topped with sharpened stakes, guard towers at each corner, a central compound that looked more like a prison than a marketplace. This would be her base of operations, her territory, her responsibility. It looked like the last place anyone would choose to live. "Welcome home," Ronan said, dismounting. A man emerged from the main building, tall, weathered, with the kind of face that had stopped being young 20 years ago. He wore a trader's vest marked with the symbols of the Free Territories, and his handshake was firm enough to hurt. "Garrick Vale," he introduced himself. "I run security here. You must be the new logistics manager Hale mentioned." "Elara Vance." Garrick's eyes did a quick assessment, taking in her travel-worn clothes, the way she stood, the lack of visible weapons. His expression said everything his mouth didn't. Another city fool come to play frontier. "You ever managed a supply depot before?" he asked. "No." "You ever dealt with raiders, smugglers, men who'd gut you for a bag of grain?" "No." "Then what exactly qualifies you for this job?" Elara met his stare. "I'm good with numbers. I don't panic easy, and I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything, which means I'll listen to people who do." She paused. "Like you, for instance." Something shifted in Garrick's expression, not quite approval, more like grudging interest. "She stays," Ronan said, ending the discussion. "Get her set up, show her the inventory system, introduce her to the key players." He turned to Elara. "I'm heading back to Ironvale tomorrow. You'll be on your own after that. How often will you be back?" "Monthly, maybe less if the routes get bad." Ronan's voice dropped slightly. "You'll report to me through coded messages via the supply runs. Anything urgent, you send a rider. But Elara, out here, urgent means life or death. Don't waste my time with minor problems." "Understood." He looked like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he just nodded and walked toward the main building, leaving her alone with Garrick. "Come on," Garrick said. "I'll show you what you're getting into." The depot was organized chaos. Wagons coming and going, goods being loaded and unloaded, arguments in 3 different languages over weights and prices. Garrick walked her through it with clipped efficiency. Inventory logs, supply schedules, payment systems, security protocols. It was complex, brutal, and fascinating. "Raiders hit us twice last month," Garrick said, pointing to scorch marks on the western wall. "Lost 3 men and a quarter of our grain stores. The Crown Brotherhood's been making noise about taxation on our routes, which is just robbery with paperwork. And the collective's threatening to cut off our water access unless we give them a percentage of profits." "What did you do?" "Paid the collective. Ignored the Brotherhood. Killed the raiders who came back." Garrick's voice was flat. "That's how it works here. You negotiate where you can, fight where you must, and pray you're faster than the other guy." Elara's stomach turned slightly, but she kept her face neutral. "What's my role in all this?" "Keep the supplies moving. Make sure we're not overstocked on goods that'll spoil and understocked on things that keep us alive. Track the routes, adjust for losses, negotiate with suppliers who will lie to your face and rob you blind if you let them." He stopped, looking at her directly. "And when things go wrong, because they will, you make the call on what we sacrifice and what we keep. Food, medicine, ammunition. You'll have to choose. And if I choose wrong, people die, probably you first." That night, alone in a small room that smelled like mildew and fear, Elara sat at a rough wooden desk and tried not to think about how far she was from everything she'd known. The bed was hard. The walls were thin. Outside, she could hear men laughing, arguing, living lives where violence was just another daily task. She pulled out paper and started working on inventory projections. Numbers steadied her, always had. She was deep in calculations when someone knocked. "It's open," she called. A woman entered, maybe 40, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that had seen too much. She carried a tray with bread and something that might have been stew. "Thought you could use food," the woman said. "I'm Mara. I run the kitchens." "Thank you." Elara gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit, please." Mara sat, studying her with the same assessing look Garrick had given her. You're younger than I expected. Disappointed? Curious. Mara poured water from a pitcher. Last person Hale sent to run logistics was a man twice your age with 20 years experience. Raiders killed him in his second month. Elara's hand stilled on her pen. That's encouraging. It's honest. Out here, lies kill faster than bullets. Mara leaned back. So I'll be honest with you. Most people here think you won't last a month. They're taking bets on how you'll go. Raiders, disease, or just running back to whatever city you crawled out of. What's your bet? I don't bet on lives. Mara's voice softened slightly. But I will say this. If you survive, you'll do it by being smarter than them, not tougher. Don't try to outfight these men. You'll lose, but outthink them? She smiled. That you might manage. Any advice? Don't trust anyone completely. Don't show weakness, but don't pretend to be something you're not. And when they test you, and they will, stand your ground, even if it scares you. Mara stood. Especially if it scares you. She left, and Elara ate the stew without tasting it, her mind already racing through everything she'd need to learn to stay alive. The test came 3 days later. Elara was in the supply warehouse, inventorying a shipment of medical supplies, when she heard shouting outside. She emerged to find a crowd gathered near the main gate, guards, traders, workers, all focused on something she couldn't see. She pushed through the crowd and stopped. A woman knelt in the dirt, bloodied and bound, surrounded by 4 men on horseback. The riders wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that looked well used. Raiders. And behind them, another dozen riders waited just outside the gate. We want compensation, the lead raider was saying. He was young, maybe 30, with a scarred face and eyes that enjoyed cruelty. You killed 3 of ours last month. Fair's fair. We're owed. Garrick stood between the raiders and the compound, rifle in hand but not raised. You attacked us. We defended ourselves. There's no debt. That's not how we see it. The raider smiled, showing broken teeth. So here's what's going to happen. You give us the woman, he gestured to the kneeling captive, and we call it even. She's worth something. Young, healthy. Someone will pay good money for her down in the southern markets. We don't trade in people, Garrick said. You do today. Or we burn this place to the ground and take what we want anyway. The crowd had gone silent, tense, waiting to see which way this would break. Elara's mind raced. 15 raiders against maybe 20 defenders. Possible to fight, but costly. The woman was already injured, probably taken from a caravan they'd attacked. If Garrick refused, people would die. But if he agreed... She stepped forward before she could stop herself. I have a better offer, Elara said. Every head turned toward her. Garrick's eyes widened slightly, not quite alarmed, but close. The lead raider looked amused. And who the hell are you? He asked. Elara Vance. I run logistics here, which means I run inventory, which means I know what we have that you actually need. We don't need anything from you except that woman. You sure? Elara kept her voice level, fighting to control the fear climbing her spine. Because I'm looking at your horses, and 3 of them are lame. I'm looking at your gear, and half of it's falling apart. And I'm looking at your men, and at least 2 of them have infections that'll turn fatal without proper medicine. The raider's smile faded. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Elara moved closer, ignoring Garrick's warning look. You're raiders, but you're not stupid. You know attacking a fortified depot costs men and supplies you can't afford to lose. That's why you're here negotiating instead of fighting. You need something, and it's not her. She pointed to the captive woman. She's leverage, but leverage only works if the other side's afraid. You should be afraid, little girl. I am, Elara said honestly, but I'm also practical. So here's my offer. We give you medical supplies. Clean bandages, antiseptic, basic antibiotics. Plus grain, enough to feed your group for 2 weeks. Plus new tack for your horses. And you let the woman go and leave us alone for the rest of the season. The raider laughed. That's it? Some bandages and horse feed? That's what keeps you alive. The woman gets you coin, maybe. But coin doesn't fix infected wounds or lame horses. And it definitely doesn't feed you when every other trading post between here and the southern markets is closed because winter's coming. Silence stretched. The raider studied her, calculating. Why would you do that? He asked finally. Why give us anything? Because it's cheaper than fighting you. I lose supplies I can replace. Fighting you, I lose men I can't. Elara held his gaze. And because if I give you what you need, you go away. But if I fight you, even if we win, you'll come back. And next time, you'll bring more men. She was gambling, hoping he was smart enough to see the logic, desperate enough to take the deal. Behind her, she could feel Garrick's tension, the crowd's shock. She was making decisions above her authority, offering depot resources without approval. She was also saving lives. The raider looked at his men, then back at Elara. You got stones, city girl. I'll give you that. He paused. Deal. But I want double the grain you offered. No, what I offered, or we fight, and you lose more men than you can afford. You're awful confident for someone who's never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I have 20 armed men who will. Elara's voice didn't waver. But why waste them when we can both get what we need? Another long pause. Then the raider nodded. All right. But if you short us, we come back. And next time, there's no negotiating. Understood. He dismounted, cut the woman's bonds, and shoved her forward. She stumbled, caught herself, and ran toward the compound. Garrick caught her, steadied her, his eyes never leaving the raiders. Get them what was promised, Elara said to one of the nearby workers. Quickly. It took 20 minutes to load the supplies. 20 minutes where everyone waited, weapons ready, for the deal to fall apart. But it didn't. The raiders took the goods, mounted up, and rode away without another word. Only when they were out of sight did the crowd exhale. Garrick turned to Elara, his face unreadable. My office, now. She followed him into the main building, knowing she was about to get torn apart. Garrick closed the door, then spun on her. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking we'd lose men if we fought. You had no authority to negotiate. You just gave away depot resources without approval. I gave away supplies we can replace to avoid casualties we can't. Elara's voice was steady, despite her racing heart. Tell me I'm wrong. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. You hired me to make decisions about resources. I made one. You hired yourself, Garrick shot back. Hale hired you. And when he finds out you just handed over a month's worth of medical supplies to raiders, he'll what? Fire me? Send me back to Ironvale? Elara stepped closer. I made a call. Maybe it was wrong. But that woman is alive because of it, and so are your men. This time, Garrick's voice dropped. But you just taught every raider within 100 miles that we negotiate, that we're soft. You think they won't come back? I think they'll come back either way. But next time, maybe they'll talk before they shoot. Garrick stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're either brilliant or suicidal. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? That got another laugh. Get out of my office, and next time you want to bet the depot's resources on your negotiating skills, give me a heads up first. Does that mean I was right? It means you're not dead yet. Don't push your luck. Elara left, legs shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She made it to her room before collapsing into the chair, hands trembling. She'd gambled and won, barely. But Garrick was right. She'd also painted a target on the depot, on herself. The next morning, Mara brought her breakfast and news. Word spreading, she said, about what you did. Some people think you're brave. Most think you're crazy. What do you think? I think you're both. Mara set down the tray. But you saved Lysa, the woman they took. She's a widow with 3 kids. Those kids still have a mother because of you. I just did the math. No. You did what was right, even though it scared you. Mara smiled. That's not math. That's courage. 2 weeks passed. Elara threw herself into the work, organizing supply lines, negotiating with traders, learning the brutal economics of frontier survival. She discovered she had a talent for it, for seeing patterns, finding efficiencies, turning chaos into something manageable. The men slowly stopped treating her like a liability. Not warmly, frontier folk didn't do warm, but with grudging respect. She'd proven she could make hard calls. That was currency here. Ronan returned a month later, as promised. They met in Garrick's office, reviewing reports while Garrick outlined everything that had happened, including the raider incident. Ronan listened without interrupting. When Garrick finished, he turned to Elara. "You negotiated with raiders," he said. Not a question. "Yes." "Without authorization." "Yes." "And gave away depot resources." "Yes." Ronan was silent for a moment. Then, "Did it work?" "We're all still alive, so yes." "Good." He looked at Garrick. "Any problems since?" "None. They've actually been quiet. Word is they're telling other groups to avoid us because we're reasonable but armed." Garrick shook his head. "I still think she got lucky." "Maybe." Ronan's gaze returned to Elara. "Or maybe she understood something we didn't, that sometimes the best defense isn't the biggest gun." Later, after Garrick left, Ronan and Elara walked the compound perimeter. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of red and orange. "You surprised me," Ronan said. "Good surprise or bad?" "Good. You adapted faster than I expected." He paused. "But Garrick's not wrong. You got lucky. Next time, you might not." "I know. And you're still willing to do this?" Elara looked out at the wilderness beyond the walls. Harsh, unforgiving, beautiful in its own brutal way. "Yeah, I am." "Why?" "Because for the first time in my life, I'm not invisible. People see me here. Even when they're betting I'll fail, they see me." Ronan nodded slowly. "That matters to you." "It shouldn't, but it does." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Ronan said, "I'm heading back tomorrow, but I'll be back in 6 weeks. Try not to get killed before then." "I'll do my best." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Elara?" "Yeah?" "You did good. With the raiders. Most people would have frozen or fought. You found the third option." His voice was quiet. "That's why I hired you." He left before she could respond. The next month brought a brutal rhythm. Supply caravans came and went. Raiders probed the defenses but didn't attack. The weather turned colder, making every task harder. Elara learned to shoot, to ride better, to read the signs of coming trouble in how the guards moved. She learned to survive. But survival, she was discovering, wasn't the same as living. She still thought about Ironvale, about her family, about Marcus and Serena's wedding that had happened without her. News traveled slowly north, but it traveled. She'd heard through a trader that the wedding was beautiful, that Serena looked radiant, that no one mentioned the absent sister. It hurt less than she expected, or maybe she'd just gotten better at ignoring pain. Then, on a gray morning in late autumn, everything changed. A rider came thundering through the gates, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. He nearly fell from the saddle, caught by 2 guards who helped him stand. "Ironvale," the rider gasped. "There's been an attack. The Crown Brotherhood, they hit the merchant district, burned half of it. Your family—" He looked at Elara, who'd come running at the commotion. "Your father's warehouse, it's gone." The world tilted. "My family?" Her voice sounded distant, not quite hers. "Are they—" "I don't know. I left before they finished counting casualties. But it's bad. Real bad." Garrick appeared, taking the rider's report with clipped efficiency. But Elara barely heard. Her mind was stuck on one image. Her father's warehouse burning. The place where she'd spent her childhood. Where she'd learned everything she knew about trade and numbers and survival. Gone. "I have to go back," she heard herself say. "No." Garrick's voice was firm. "It's a 3-day ride in good conditions. You'd be alone, exposed. I don't care, my family might already be dead," Garrick said bluntly. "And you dying on the road doesn't change that." "He's right." Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. Elara spun to find him standing in the gate. He must have arrived just after the rider. His face was grim. "Ironvale's locked down. The Brotherhood's claiming it was retaliation for trade restrictions. It's a war zone." "Then I'll fight my way through." Elara was moving toward the stables before she realized it. "I'm not leaving them." Ronan caught her arm. Not hard, but firm. "Listen to me. Going back alone is suicide, but—" He paused, something shifting in his expression. "I'm heading back with a security detail anyway. You can come, but you follow my orders. No arguments. When do we leave?" 20 minutes. Elara ran to her room, threw essentials into a pack, and met Ronan at the gate. 6 armed men waited, mounted and ready. She took the horse they'd prepared for her, her bay mare, already saddled, and fell into formation. They rode hard, pushing through territory that grew more dangerous with each mile. Twice they spotted raider scouts. Once they heard gunfire in the distance. But they didn't stop, couldn't stop. On the second night, camped in a hollow with no fire, Ronan sat beside her. "You're quiet," he said. "I keep thinking about the last thing I said to my father." Elara's voice was barely above a whisper. "I told him he didn't own me, that none of them did. You were angry. I was cruel." She looked at him. "What if those are the last words I ever say to him? Then you live with it, like everyone else who's ever lost someone before they could make it right." Ronan's voice was gentle but honest. "But maybe they're fine. Maybe you're worrying for nothing." "Do you believe that?" "No, but hope's cheaper than despair. So I'm choosing hope until I have a reason not to." They reached Ironvale on the third day just after dawn. The city was wounded. Smoke still rose from the merchant district, and ash covered everything like dirty snow. Guard patrols were everywhere, and the streets were empty except for people searching rubble for salvageable goods or bodies. Elara didn't wait for Ronan. She spurred her horse toward where her father's warehouse had been, her heart hammering against her ribs. The building was a skeleton, blackened timbers reaching toward gray sky, walls collapsed, everything her father had built reduced to char and memory. She dismounted, legs numb, and walked into the ruins. "Elara?" The voice was weak, coming from somewhere to her left. She spun, searching. Her father sat against a half-collapsed wall, his face gray with ash and exhaustion. His arm was bandaged, blood seeping through the cloth, but he was alive. "Father?" She ran to him, dropping to her knees. "You're alive. Are you hurt? Where's Mother? Serena?" "Safe. They're safe. At the Thorn estate. Marcus took them in when..." He broke off, coughing. "When everything started burning." Relief flooded through her, so intense it hurt. "Your warehouse," she said stupidly. Henry laughed, a broken sound. "Gone. Everything. 20 years of work gone in one night." He looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression crumbled. "I'm ruined, Elara. Finished. Without the inventory, the contracts, the records, I've got nothing left." "You've got your life. Mother and Serena are alive. That's not nothing." "It's not enough." His voice was hollow. "I can't rebuild. Not at my age. Not without capital." He met her eyes. "I failed. Failed you. Failed your mother. Failed..." "Stop." Elara's voice was sharp. "You didn't fail. You survived. And that's what matters. What am I supposed to do now? Beg Marcus Thorn for charity? Watch my daughter support us because I couldn't..." "You ask for help." Elara sat back on her heels. "You swallow your pride and you ask for help. From me, from Ronan, from anyone who'll give it. Because that's what survivors do." Henry stared at her, seeing her maybe for the first time. "You're different." "I had to be. The North doesn't care about politeness or pride. It only cares if you're strong enough to stay alive." She stood, offering him her hand. "Come on, let's get you to Mother." He took her hand, let her help him up. They walked through the ruins together, and Elara felt something shift. The invisible girl was gone. In her place stood someone her father actually had to look at. Someone who'd learned to matter. They found her mother and Serena at the Thorn estate, a massive house that had somehow escaped the fires. Catherine sobbed when she saw Elara, pulling her into a desperate embrace. Serena just stared, like she was seeing a ghost. "You came back," Serena whispered. "Of course I came back. You're my family. But I thought, after everything, you're still my sister." Elara pulled back, looking at both of them. "I'm not staying. I can't. My work is in the North. But I came because I needed to know you were safe." "The business is gone," her mother said, voice breaking. "We're ruined." "No, you're not." Elara pulled out the papers she'd grabbed from her pack, the profit reports from the Ashmark operation. "I've made good money in the North, more than enough to rebuild. I'll front the capital. Father can start over." Henry, who'd been silent until now, looked at the papers with something like shock. Elara, this is enough to save you, if you'll accept it. From your daughter who isn't supposed to know anything about business." The words hung there, sharp and necessary. Her father's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not—" "I know." Elara's voice softened. "But you see me now. That's enough." Marcus appeared in the doorway then, looking uncomfortable. "Elara, I heard you were back." "Marcus?" She kept her voice neutral. "I'm sorry. About your father's—" "Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't apologize for things you didn't cause. You gave my family shelter. That's more than most would do. I owed you. You don't owe me anything. What we had is over. You chose Serena. And honestly," she looked at her sister, then back at him, "you made the right choice. She fits here." "I never did." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Be good to her. She deserves that." Outside, Ronan was waiting with the horses. "Your family?" he asked. "Alive. Broke, but alive." "You giving them money?" "Yes." "That's generous, considering." "It's survival. They're still my family, even if they didn't see me." She mounted her horse. "Besides, now they'll owe me. That's better than them ignoring me." Ronan smiled, a real smile, rare and genuine. "You really have changed." "The North does that." They rode toward the city gates, leaving Ironvale behind for the second time. But this time, Elara wasn't running away. She was choosing to leave, and that made all the difference. They were almost through the gates when the attack came. Arrows first. A volley that took down 2 of Ronan's men before anyone could react. Then riders, pouring from side streets, wearing the red and gold colors of the Crowned Brotherhood. "Ambush!" Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "Ride! Ride now!" But they were surrounded, trapped between the Brotherhood riders and the city walls. Elara's horse reared, nearly throwing her. She fought to control it, reaching for the rifle strapped to her saddle. A hand grabbed her arm, yanked her sideways. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Above her, a Brotherhood soldier raised his sword. Ronan's blade met it with a screaming clash of metal. He drove the man back, then reached down and hauled Elara to her feet. "Behind me," he ordered. The fight was brutal and fast. Ronan's men formed a defensive circle, firing into the Brotherhood ranks. But they were outnumbered 3-1, and more riders kept coming. "We can't hold!" one of the guards shouted. Ronan's jaw set. He looked at Elara, something fierce and determined in his eyes. "When I give the signal, you run. Back into the city. Find the guard captain. Tell him what's happening. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice." His voice was hard. "I can't protect you and fight them. So you run, or we both die. Understand?" Before she could answer, a horn sounded, long, loud, unmistakable. Ironvale's city guard pouring from the gates in formation. The Brotherhood faltered. They'd expected an ambush on fleeing traders, not a full military response. Their leader, a man in ornate armor, cursed and signaled retreat. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving bodies and blood behind. Ronan lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He looked at Elara, and something passed between them, unspoken but clear. She'd almost died, and his first instinct had been to save her, even at cost to himself. "You all right?" he asked. "No." Her voice shook. "But I'm alive." "Good enough." He turned to his remaining men. "Check the wounded. We leave in 5 minutes." As they prepared to ride, Elara realized something with perfect, terrifying clarity. She didn't want to leave Ronan, didn't want to go back to the North without knowing he'd be there too. Somewhere between the frontier and this moment, the dangerous man who saw her when no one else did had become more than an employer. He'd become someone she couldn't imagine losing, and that scared her more than any raider ever could. The ride back north was silent in a way that felt different from before. The surviving guards kept their distance, speaking in low voices when they spoke at all. 2 men dead, 3 wounded. The Brotherhood's ambush had been precise, coordinated. Someone had known they'd be leaving the city. Someone had wanted them dead. Elara couldn't stop replaying the moment. Ronan's blade meeting the soldier's sword, the way he'd positioned himself between her and death without hesitation. She'd seen violence before in the North, brief and brutal. But this was different. This was someone choosing to die for her if necessary, and she didn't know what to do with that. They stopped on the second night in a hollow sheltered by rock formations. No fire again. The guards took watch positions while Ronan tended to the wounded, his movements efficient and practiced. Elara helped where she could, cleaning wounds, distributing water, checking bandages. One of the men, a young guard named Thomas with a gash across his ribs, tried to wave her off. "I'm fine," he muttered. "You're bleeding through your shirt. That's not fine." Elara didn't wait for permission. She unwrapped the hasty field dressing, wincing at the angry red edges of the wound. "This needs stitches." "We don't have—" "I do." She pulled out the small medical kit she'd started carrying after the raider incident. Needle, thread, antiseptic. Her hands shook slightly as she threaded the needle. "I've never done this on a person before. Just don't move." Thomas looked at Ronan, who nodded once. The stitching was messy and probably hurt like hell, but Thomas didn't complain. When she finished, he looked at her with something like respect. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We'll see if it gets infected." But she managed a small smile. Later, when the camp had settled into uneasy sleep, Elara found Ronan standing at the edge of their perimeter, staring out at the darkness. "You should rest," she said quietly. "Can't. Not until we're back at the depot." He didn't look at her. "Someone knew we were leaving. Someone told the Brotherhood where to wait." "Well, you think it was intentional, not just bad luck?" "I don't believe in luck. Not that kind." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Question is whether they were after me, you, or both." The possibility hadn't occurred to her. "Why would anyone be after me?" "Because you're making waves. Negotiating with raiders instead of killing them. Changing how things work. People don't like change." He finally looked at her. "Especially people who profit from chaos." Elara's mind raced through the possibilities. The Brotherhood wanted control of trade routes. If someone was working with them, destabilizing the northern territories would make those routes more valuable. And she was the one bringing stability. "I'm a target," she said slowly. "You've been a target since you took this job. You just didn't know it." Ronan's voice softened slightly. "I should have told you, should have prepared you better." "Would it have changed anything?" "No, but you'd have been ready." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Elara said, "Thank you for what you did back there." "Don't thank me for keeping you alive. That's my job." "Is it? I thought your job was running supply routes." She paused. "Protecting me seems personal." Ronan's expression was unreadable in the darkness. "Maybe it is." "Why?" "Because—" He stopped, choosing words carefully. "Because you remind me of someone I used to be. Someone who thought being invisible was safer than being seen. And I know how that ends. You either stay invisible until you disappear completely, or you step forward and risk everything." He met her eyes. "You stepped forward. That takes courage most people don't have. Or stupidity." "Same thing, sometimes." A ghost of a smile. "Get some sleep. We've got a long ride tomorrow." But Elara didn't sleep. She lay on her bedroll, staring at stars she couldn't name, and thought about choices. About the moment she'd signed Ronan's contract, about leaving Ironvale, about every decision that had led her to this. Bleeding men in the wilderness, a price on her head, and a dangerous man who looked at her like she mattered. She'd spent her whole life trying to be safe, trying to fit, trying to be chosen. And the moment she'd stopped trying, everything had changed. They reached Ashmark Station 3 days later to find the compound in chaos. Traders arguing in the courtyard, guards on high alert, and Garrick pacing like a caged animal. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded the moment they rode through the gates. "We've had 3 supply caravans attacked in the past week. 6 men dead. And the Crown Brotherhood sent a messenger 2 days ago demanding we surrender operations or face consequences." "We ran into their consequences," Ronan said, dismounting. "They ambushed us outside Ironvale. They're coordinating attacks now. This isn't random raiding anymore." Garrick's face went pale. "How bad?" "Bad enough that we need to rethink our entire security strategy." Ronan looked at Elara. "Call a meeting. Everyone who has authority here. 1 hour." The meeting room was packed. Traders, guards, suppliers, workers who'd been with the depot for years. Elara stood at the front beside Ronan and Garrick, feeling the weight of their stares. She'd proven herself once with the raiders, but that had been one moment, one gamble. Now she needed to prove she could think strategically, could lead when the situation was deteriorating fast. "The Brotherhood is targeting us specifically," Ronan began without preamble. "They want control of these routes. They've allied with raider groups we thought were independent, and they're willing to kill anyone who stands in their way." "So what do we do?" someone called from the back. "Surrender? Run?" "We fight," Garrick said. "With what?" Another voice. "They've got 3 times our numbers. Better weapons. We hold out here, they'll just starve us out or burn us down." Arguments erupted, voices overlapping, fear and anger mixing into noise. Elara watched it spiral, saw the panic spreading. These were people who'd survived by being adaptable, by knowing when to fight and when to flee. And right now, fleeing looked smarter. She stepped forward, raised her voice. "We don't fight them directly." The room quieted. "We can't match their numbers," Elara continued, "and we can't outlast a siege. But we have something they don't, connections. We've spent months building relationships with every trader, supplier, and settlement in this region. The Brotherhood has threats. We have trust." "Trust doesn't stop bullets," someone muttered. "No, but it builds alliances." Elara moved to the map on the wall, pointing to the territories surrounding them. "The Ashmark Collective hates the Brotherhood. So do most of the Free Territories. They've been fighting them for years. But they're not organized. They don't coordinate." "And we're supposed to organize them?" Garrick's tone was skeptical. "These groups won't even talk to each other." "They will if survival depends on it." Elara looked at Ronan, who was watching her with quiet intensity. "We broker a truce, a temporary alliance. Every group that's been hurt by the Brotherhood, we bring them together. Not to attack, just to defend. Make it too costly for the Brotherhood to keep pushing." "That's insane," someone said. "Those groups would rather die than work together." "Maybe. But maybe they'd rather kill Brotherhood soldiers than kill each other." Elara's voice was steady. "We're not asking them to be friends, just to stop being enemies long enough to survive a common threat." Silence fell. People exchanged glances, calculating. Finally, Mara spoke from her corner. "Who'd negotiate this? Who'd be crazy enough to walk into collective territory and free territories and convince them to trust us?" Every eye turned to Elara. "I will," she said. "Absolutely not." Ronan's voice was flat, final. "It's too dangerous." "Everything's dangerous. But I'm the only one who can do this." Elara met his stare. "I'm the one who negotiated with the raiders, who gave them what they needed instead of what they feared. These groups need someone who'll talk to them like they're people, not problems. That's not you, Ronan. You're a fighter. They'll see you coming and reach for weapons, but me?" She gestured to herself. "I'm nobody. A city girl who shouldn't have lasted a week. That makes me less threatening. It also makes you an easy target. Then come with me, as security. But let me do the talking." She turned to the room. "This is our only option. We can't fight, we can't run. So we build something bigger than us, or we die trying." The vote was close, but it passed. 3 days to prepare, then Elara and a small team would ride out to negotiate with the collective and the free territories. Ronan argued against it for an hour after the meeting, his frustration barely contained. "You're asking me to watch you walk into hostile territory and just hope they don't kill you," he said, pacing his office. "I'm asking you to trust me." Elara stood her ground. "The same way you trusted me to run logistics, the same way you trusted me when you offered me this job." "That was different." "How?" "Because—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "Because if you die negotiating supply contracts, I lose an employee. If you die out there, I lose—" He didn't finish. "What?" Elara's voice was softer now. "What do you lose?" Ronan looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain, vulnerable. "Someone I can't afford to lose," he said, finally. The words hung between them, too honest to ignore, too dangerous to acknowledge fully. "I'll be careful," Elara said. "That's not enough." "It's all I've got." They left before dawn, Elara, Ronan, Garrick, and 4 guards. The collective's territory was 2 days north, through land that grew progressively more hostile. Abandoned homesteads gave way to fortified settlements, suspicious eyes tracking them from behind walls. The collective's main compound was built into a mountainside, part fortress, part mine, all paranoia. They were stopped a mile out by armed scouts who looked like they'd been born holding rifles. "State your business," the lead scout demanded. A woman, scarred and hard-eyed. "We're from Ashmark Station," Elara said before Ronan could speak. "We're here to talk to your council about the Brotherhood. We don't need outsiders telling us about the Brotherhood. We're not here to tell you anything. We're here to offer an alliance." That got a reaction, surprise mostly. The scouts exchanged glances. "Wait here," the woman said, and rode off. 2 hours passed before they were allowed through. The compound was larger than Elara expected, carved into rock with military precision. Hundreds of people lived here. Former miners, their families, refugees from Brotherhood territory. They'd built something impressive out of desperation and spite. The council met them in a chamber that still smelled like ore and sweat. 5 leaders, all weathered and suspicious. The woman who'd stopped them, her name was Commander Reese, sat at the center. "You've got 5 minutes," Reese said. "Speak." Elara stepped forward, ignoring the way Ronan tensed beside her. "The Brotherhood is killing anyone who won't submit. They've hit Ashmark Station 3 times in the past month. Before that, they burned half of Ironvale's merchant district. They're coordinating with raider groups, consolidating power, and they won't stop until they control every trade route in the north." "That's not news," one of the other council members said. "We've been fighting them for years." "Separately, you fight them. The free territories fight them. We fight them, but we don't fight together." Elara pulled out a map, spread it on the table. "Look at this. Their supply lines run through here, here, and here. They're stretched thin, strong individually, but vulnerable collectively. If we coordinate, not attack, just defend and sink, we make every assault too costly. They can't fight all of us at once." "Why should we trust you?" Reese's eyes were sharp. "You're traitors. You profit from chaos." "We profit from stability. Chaos means dead suppliers, burned depots, and trade routes that don't exist anymore. The Brotherhood wants to own the routes. We just want them to work." Same result. Someone gets rich, someone else gets trampled. Maybe. But with us, you have a say in how the routes run. With the Brotherhood, you're either soldiers or corpses. There's no third option. Silence stretched. The council members looked at each other, some kind of silent communication passing between them. "What exactly are you proposing?" Reese asked finally. "A defensive pact. When the Brotherhood attacks one of us, we signal the others. We coordinate defenses. We share intelligence. No one fights alone." Elara paused. "And in exchange, Ashmark Station prioritizes supply routes to the collective. Better prices. Guaranteed delivery. You get what you need to survive, we get allies who won't let us burn. And the free territories? They'll never agree." "Let me worry about the free territories." Elara met Reese's gaze steadily. "I just need to know if you're in." Another long silence. Then Reese stood, extended her hand. "We're in. Provisionally. But if you betray us—" "We won't." Elara shook her hand, feeling the calluses, the strength. "You'll get what we promised." Outside, as they prepared to ride to the free territories, Ronan pulled her aside. "That was impressive," he said. "That was terrifying." "Same thing." He almost smiled. "But you did it. They believed you." "They believed the logic. That's different." "Is it?" Ronan's expression turned serious. "You gave them something to hope for. In a place like this, that's worth more than bullets." The free territories were harder. Scattered settlements with no central authority, just loose agreements and mutual suspicion. It took a week to visit enough communities to build consensus. Elara talked until her voice went hoarse, explaining the same thing over and over. Together we survive, divided we die. Some agreed immediately. Others needed convincing. A few told them to leave and never come back. But slowly, painfully, the alliance took shape. By the time they returned to Ashmark Station, Elara had commitments from 12 settlements. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough to change the equation. The Brotherhood tested them 2 weeks later. A supply caravan moving through collective territory was ambushed by 20 Brotherhood soldiers. In the past, the collective would have stayed behind their walls, let the traitors die, and blamed them for being careless. This time, collective fighters rode out to help, caught the Brotherhood between the caravan guards and their own forces. Killed 8 Brotherhood soldiers, wounded 6 more, and sent the rest running. The message spread fast. Attack 1, you fight all. The Brotherhood pulled back, regrouping. Their assaults became less frequent, more cautious. The raider groups they'd allied with started to drift away, sensing the tide turning, and Elara's name started appearing in reports. The woman who'd united the territories. The traitor who fought with alliances instead of weapons. The girl no one saw had become someone no one could ignore. 3 months after the alliance formed, Ronan called Elara to his office. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Just one? That's progress." He didn't smile. Marcus Thorne sent a message. He's coming north. Wants to discuss a trade agreement between his family's business and our operations. Elara's stomach dropped. "When?" 2 weeks. He'll be here with a delegation." Ronan watched her carefully. "I can tell him no. Say we're too unstable for negotiations. And lose a major contract? No. If the Thorne family wants to trade with us, we trade with them." She kept her voice level. "I can handle Marcus." "Can you?" "I survived the North. I survived the Brotherhood. I can survive my ex-fiancée who wasn't actually my fiancée." "That's not what I'm worried about." Ronan's voice was quiet. "I'm worried you'll forget what you built here, who you became. The moment he walks in, you'll remember who you used to be." "I won't." "How do you know?" "Because the girl he knew doesn't exist anymore." Elara met his eyes. "She died somewhere between Ironvale and here, and I'm not interested in resurrecting her." Marcus arrived on a cold morning in early spring. He rode in with 6 guards and his father, William Thorne, both dressed like they were attending a society dinner instead of visiting a frontier depot. The contrast was almost comical, their polished boots next to the mud, their clean clothes next to the workers in worn leather and blood-stained shirts. Elara watched from the guard tower as they dismounted. Marcus looked older, more tired. His confidence seemed forced, like armor that didn't quite fit anymore. She climbed down, checked her appearance in a window's reflection. Practical clothes, dirt under her nails, hair pulled back efficiently. She looked like she belonged here. Because she did. The meeting was held in the main hall with Ronan and Garrick flanking Elara. Marcus and his father sat across the table, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Thank you for seeing us," William began. "We've heard impressive things about the Ashmark operations. The alliance you've built with the surrounding territories is unprecedented." "It's necessary," Elara said. "Out here, cooperation isn't noble. It's survival." "Quite." William cleared his throat. "We'd like to discuss routing some of our northern trade through your depot. The fees would be substantial, and we'd ensure preferential treatment for your caravans through Ironvale." "Why?" Ronan's voice was flat. "Your family's done fine without us." "The Brotherhood's expansion has made our previous routes unreliable, and frankly," William glanced at Elara, "we've heard your logistics manager is exceptional. We'd like to benefit from that expertise." "You mean the logistics manager you ignored when she lived in Ironvale?" Elara's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "The one whose family business you let burn while you protected your own interests?" Marcus flinched. "That's not fair, Elara. We took your family in after they lost everything. How generous." She leaned back. "But I'm not here to rehash the past. You want to use our routes, we'll discuss terms. But understand something. This isn't Ironvale. Out here, I'm not your convenient bookkeeper or your charity case. I'm the person who decides if your caravans get through or if they sit outside our walls until the Brotherhood finds them." Silence crashed through the room. William's face reddened. "That's extortion." "No, that's business. You want our protection, our alliances, our expertise? You pay for it. Fair rates, but not friendly ones." Elara pulled out a contract she'd prepared. "These are our terms. Take them or leave them." Marcus was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "When did you become this?" "When you married my sister and proved that being nice gets you nothing." She pushed the contract across the table. "Sign or don't. Either way, this meeting is over in 5 minutes." William read the contract, his expression growing darker. "These rates are competitive, I checked." Elara's voice didn't waver. "You'll pay more than you want and less than you'd pay anyone else. That's the deal." Father and son exchanged looks. Then William signed. "We'll send our first caravan next month," he said stiffly. "Looking forward to it." Elara stood, signaling the meeting was done. Marcus lingered as his father left. Can we talk? Privately? Elara glanced at Ronan, who was watching with carefully controlled tension. She nodded once, and he left, though his reluctance was obvious. What do you want, Marcus? I wanted to apologize for everything, for not seeing. He stopped, searching for words. You were right there. For 2 years you were right there, and I was too blind to see you. And now? Now I see you, and I realize I made a mistake. Elara laughed, sharp and humorless. A mistake. That's what you're calling it. Elara, I'm serious. She's not who I thought she was. She's beautiful, but there's no depth, no substance. Every conversation is about her, about appearances, about... He moved closer. I made the wrong choice. I see that now. So you came all the way north to tell me you settled for my sister and regret it? That's supposed to make me feel better? I came to tell you I want another chance. With you. We could... No. The word was final, absolute. Elara, please. You chose her because she was easy, because she fit, because marrying her made sense to everyone watching. Elara's voice was steady. And now that you're realizing easy isn't enough, you think you can just come back to me? Like I've been waiting? Like I'm still that girl who'd take whatever scraps you offered? That's exactly what you're doing. You want comfort with convenience. You want someone who'll make you feel noble for choosing them. But Marcus, I'm not that person anymore. I don't need you to see me. I don't need you to choose me. I already chose myself. She stepped back. Go home to your wife. Figure out how to make that work, but leave me out of it. She turned to leave. He'll hurt you, Marcus said quietly. Ronan Hale. Men like him, they don't love. They possess. And when he's done with you... Elara stopped, looked back. You don't know anything about him, or me. Not anymore. She found Ronan in the stables, checking the horses with focused intensity that meant he was avoiding thinking about something. How'd it go? He asked without looking up. He apologized, said he made a mistake, asked for another chance. Ronan's hand stilled on the saddle he was inspecting. And what did you say? I said no. He looked at her then, something unguarded in his expression. Why? Because he wanted the old me, the invisible girl who'd be grateful for his attention. Elara moved closer. And I'm not her anymore. I don't want to be her anymore. What do you want? The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid. I want... Elara stopped, choosing words carefully. I want what's real, what's honest, even if it's hard, even if it scares me. Ronan set down the saddle, turned to face her fully. And what's real to you? This, the North, the work we do, the alliance we built. She paused. You. Me. Not a question, almost a challenge. You see me, not the version of me that's easy or convenient, just me. The angry parts, the scared parts, the parts that don't fit anywhere. Elara's voice was quiet. And you don't try to fix them, you just let them exist. That's because they don't need fixing. Ronan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exact gray of his eyes, the scar through his eyebrow. You think you're broken because you don't fit their world. But Elara, you're not broken. You just needed a different world. This world? Where everything wants to kill me? This world where you matter, where what you do changes things, where being smart and fierce and uncompromising isn't a flaw, it's survival. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. Marcus was right about one thing. I will hurt you, not because I want to, but because I'm not good at this. At caring about people. I've spent 20 years learning not to. Then why? Because you make me want to remember how. His voice was rough, and that scares the hell out of me. Elara's heart hammered. What are we doing? I don't know, but I know I don't want you to go back to him. Back to that life, back to being invisible. Ronan's hand curved against her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Stay here. Keep building what you started. Keep being impossible to ignore. I'm not going anywhere. She leaned into his touch. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not tentative, but with the same brutal honesty he brought to everything, like he was claiming something he'd been fighting not to want. And Elara kissed him back, tasting certainty for the first time in her life. When they finally pulled apart, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "Probably," Elara smiled. "But I've gotten good at terrible ideas." "That you have." Outside, the depot was alive with noise. Traders bargaining, guards training, the alliance she'd built humming with purpose. The girl who'd left Ironvale invisible had become the woman who held the North together. And the man who'd never needed anyone had chosen to need her. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And for the first time, real was enough. And for the first time, real was enough. Spring came to the north with reluctant warmth, melting snow into mud that made every road treacherous and every supply run twice as difficult. But the depot thrived despite it, or maybe because of it. The alliance held. Caravans moved with coordinated protection. The Brotherhood's attacks became sporadic, desperate. They were losing ground, and everyone knew it. Elara stood in the guard tower at dawn, watching another successful caravan depart. 6 wagons, 20 guards, routes that would have been suicide 6 months ago. Now they were routine. She'd done that. Built something that worked when everyone said it couldn't. The satisfaction should have felt complete. Instead, there was an edge of unease she couldn't name. "You're up early?" Ronan's voice came from behind her. He climbed the last few steps, carrying 2 cups of coffee that steamed in the cold air. "Couldn't sleep." She took the offered cup, grateful for the warmth. "Something feels off." "Off how?" "Too quiet. The Brotherhood pulled back weeks ago. No attacks, no threats, nothing." She looked at him. "That doesn't make sense. They don't just give up. Maybe they finally learned their lesson. Or they're planning something bigger." Elara's instincts, honed by months of frontier survival, were screaming warning. "We should increase patrols, double the guard rotations." "Already done." Ronan leaned against the railing beside her. Garrick had the same thought. "We're ready." "Are we?" He studied her face. "What are you really worried about?" "That I missed something, that all this," she gestured to the depot below, "is about to collapse because I got cocky, thought I was smarter than I am." "You're the smartest person here. That's not arrogance, it's fact." Ronan's voice was matter-of-fact. "But even smart people can't predict everything. Sometimes you just have to trust. You built something strong enough to survive the hits." Before she could respond, a horn sounded, long, urgent, the alarm. They ran. The courtyard was chaos. Guards scrambling, weapons being distributed, Garrick shouting orders. A rider had just come through the gates, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. "What happened?" Ronan demanded. The rider, one of their scouts, gasped for breath. "The Brotherhood, they're not attacking us. They're attacking the collective, full force. Every soldier they have. They're trying to burn them out before anyone can respond." Elara's blood went cold. "How long do we have?" "They hit them an hour ago. Resent riders to every allied settlement, calling for help. But it'll take time to mobilize. Time they don't have." Elara looked at Ronan. "We have to go. Now." "With what forces?" Garrick had joined them, his face grim. "Most of our fighters are out with the caravans. We've got maybe 30 men combat ready." "Then we take 30 men?" Elara's voice was sharp with urgency. "The collective has 200 fighters. If we can reach them, combine forces, we might hold, and if we can't reach them in time, we lose 30 men for nothing." Garrick shook his head. "I'm not sending our people into a massacre." "So we just let them die? Let the Brotherhood take out our strongest ally?" Elara's frustration boiled over. Without the collective, the alliance falls apart. Every settlement goes back to defending themselves. The Brotherhood wins. Everything we built, gone. "She's right." Ronan's voice cut through the argument. "If the collective falls, we're next. Better to fight together than wait to die alone." He looked at Garrick. "Get every man who can ride ready to move in 10 minutes. Pull the perimeter guards if you have to. That leaves us defenseless here. The fight's not here. It's there. Move." Garrick hesitated, then nodded and ran to organize the men. Elara grabbed Ronan's arm. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. You need every fighter you have. I can shoot, I can ride. And I know the collective's compound better than most of your men. I negotiated the alliance there, remember? You're not trained for this kind of fight. Neither was I trained to survive the North, and I'm still here. Her grip tightened. I'm not sitting behind these walls while people die defending an alliance I built. I'm going. Ronan's jaw clenched. She could see him calculating, weighing risks. Finally, you stay with me. You don't leave my sight. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. 20 minutes later, they rode out. 32 fighters, including Elara. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was what they had. The ride to the collective took 3 hours at a punishing pace. They could see the smoke long before they reached the compound. Thick, black columns rising into pale sky. The smell hit next. Burning wood, burning flesh, the acrid stink of warfare. They crested the final ridge, and Elara's stomach dropped. The collective's compound was under siege. Brotherhood soldiers had surrounded it, firing into the walls, trying to smoke out defenders. Bodies littered the ground, some in Brotherhood colors, more in the collective's practical grays. The defensive walls were holding, but barely. Sections had already collapsed. We can't charge straight in, Ronan said, eyes scanning the battlefield. They'd cut us down before we reached the walls. There's a service entrance on the north side, Elara said, pointing. It's hidden, defensible. If we can reach it, we get inside, reinforce their position, and get trapped inside with them. One of the guards, a veteran named Cole, shook his head. We need to hit them from behind, force them to fight on 2 fronts. That splits our already small force, Garrick started. No. Elara's mind was racing, seeing angles. We do both. 10 men with Cole hit them from behind, cause chaos, draw their attention. The rest of us use that distraction to reach the service entrance. Once we're inside, we open the main gate from within. The collective's fighters pour out. We've got them surrounded instead of them surrounding us. The men looked at each other, then at Ronan. It's risky, he said slowly. A lot can go wrong. Everything about this is risky. Elara met his eyes. But it's better than charging headlong into superior numbers. Ronan nodded once. Cole, take your best men. Give us 5 minutes to get in position, then hit them loud and hard. Make them think you're the main attack. Got it. They split up. Elara rode with Ronan and 20 men toward the hidden entrance, keeping to the tree line, moving as quietly as possible. The sounds of battle grew louder. Screams, gunfire, the crash of something collapsing. Her heart hammered, adrenaline making everything sharp and bright. They reached the service entrance just as Cole's group hit the Brotherhood's rear flank. The distraction worked. Brotherhood soldiers turned to face the new threat, attention diverted. Ronan's group dismounted, rushed the entrance. It was barred from inside, but a few hard kicks broke it open. They poured into the compound. Inside was worse than outside. The collective's fighters were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. Commander Reese was in the center, covered in blood and ash, shouting orders with a voice going hoarse. She saw them, and relief flashed across her face. About damn time! We're opening the main gate, Ronan said. How many fighters can you spare? Everyone who can still walk. Reese grabbed a nearby fighter. Get every able body to the main gate. We're breaking this siege. The plan worked like broken clockwork. Messy, violent, but effective. They fought through Brotherhood forces to reach the gate mechanism. Lost 3 men doing it, but they got it open. The collective's fighters surged out, fresh anger fueling them. Caught between Cole's group and the collective's full force, the Brotherhood's line crumbled. They fought hard. Desperate men always do, but they were outmaneuvered, outthought. The battle ended as the sun reached its peak. Brotherhood soldiers who could run did. Those who couldn't surrendered or died. Elara sat against a wall, hands shaking, rifle still gripped tight. She'd fired it, had watched men fall. Wasn't sure if she'd actually hit anyone, but the possibility sat in her chest like lead. Ronan found her there. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, but alive. Whole. You all right? He asked. No? Her voice was hollow. But I'm alive, that's something. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. You did good. Your plan saved lives. It also cost them. 3 of our men. Would be 30 if we'd done it any other way. His voice was gentle but firm. This is war, Elara. People die. You can't save everyone. You can only make the choices that save the most. That's cold. That's survival. He looked at her. You think I like it? Counting bodies and calling it victory? But the alternative is lying to ourselves about what this life costs. Elara leaned against him, exhausted. I hate that you're right. Get used to it. I'm right a lot. That pulled a weak laugh from her. Reese approached, limping slightly. We need to talk, both of you. They followed her to what remained of the council chamber. The other council members were there, the ones who'd survived. 2 seats sat empty. The Brotherhood's broken, Reese said without preamble. They threw everything at us. We held. Thanks to you. She looked at Elara specifically. Your alliance worked. When we needed help, it came. That's never happened before in the North. Never. We barely made it in time, Elara started. But you made it. That's what matters. Another council member, an older man named Garrett, leaned forward. Which brings us to a question. What happens now? The alliance was defensive. We survived the attack. Does that mean it's over? Silence fell. Elara hadn't thought that far ahead, had been so focused on surviving that she hadn't considered what came after survival. It doesn't have to be over, she said slowly. The Brotherhood's broken, but they're not gone, and there'll be others, new threats, new problems. She looked around the table. But if we keep working together, coordinate our resources, maybe we build something that lasts. Not just a defensive pact, an actual coalition. A Northern Territories alliance? Garrett's tone was skeptical. That's ambitious. So is surviving. So is everything we've done. Elara's voice gained strength. We proved we can work together when we have to. Why stop just because the immediate threat is gone? Because alliances fall apart when there's no enemy to fight, Reese said. People go back to their old grudges, their old ways. Then we give them something better to focus on, trade agreements, shared resources, projects that benefit everyone. Elara pulled out a map she'd been carrying. Look, if we coordinate supply routes across all our territories, we cut costs by half. If we share security forces, every settlement gets better protection. If we pool resources for infrastructure, roads, bridges, way stations, we all benefit. The Brotherhood was the crisis that brought us together, but prosperity could keep us together. The council members exchanged looks. You're talking about changing how the North works, Garrett said. That's not small, that's necessary. If we want to be more than people who barely survive. Elara met each council member's eyes in turn. We can go back to how things were, fighting over scraps, dying in isolated pockets, or we can build something better, something that outlasts us. Reese was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to see a formal proposal, numbers, logistics, how this would actually work. I'll have it ready in 2 weeks. Make it 1. We're calling a gathering of every allied settlement. They'll want answers. Reese stood. If you can convince them this isn't just pretty words, maybe we have something. But Elara, these are frontier people. They don't trust easy. You'll need more than good intentions. I've got more than intentions. I've got proof it works. We're standing in it. After they left, Ronan and Elara walked the compound's ruined perimeter. The collective's people were already rebuilding, clearing rubble, repairing walls, burying their dead. Resilient in the way only survivors could be. You're building something that'll outlive you, Ronan said. You know that, right? Is that bad? No, it's legacy. Most people don't get that. He paused. But it also means you're stuck here, in the North. No going back to Ironvale, to that life. I don't want that life. Elara looked at him. This is where I belong. Where I've always belonged. I just didn't know it until I got here. And me. His voice was careful. Where do I fit in this future you're building? Wherever you want to fit. If you want to. She took his hand, calloused palm against calloused palm. I'm not asking you to be something you're not. But if you're willing to try this, us, building something together, then I want that. Ronan's expression softened in that rare way that meant he was being completely honest. I spent 20 years not needing anyone, being fine alone, and then you showed up and ruined that. Sorry? Don't be. It needed ruining. He pulled her closer. I don't know how to do this. Be with someone. build something that's not just about survival. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together, Elara smiled. Badly, probably. But together. That's all I've got to offer. Badly, together. That's enough. He kissed her there, among the ruins, with survivors rebuilding around them. It wasn't romantic in any traditional sense. It was real, hard-earned, honest. The gathering happened 3 weeks later. Every Allied settlement sent representatives, some skeptical, some hopeful, all wary. They met in a massive tent erected outside Ashmark Station, neutral ground where no one felt threatened. Elara stood before them, maps and projections spread across tables, her proposal outlined in excruciating detail. She'd worked for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping, running numbers until her eyes blurred. Ronan had helped, his practical experience balancing her theoretical planning. Now came the test, convincing hardened frontier survivors that cooperation was worth the risk. She spoke for 2 hours, outlined the trade benefits, the security improvements, the infrastructure projects, showed them how pooling resources made everyone stronger, answered questions, some hostile, some genuine, without flinching. When she finished, exhaustion crashed over her, but she stayed standing, waiting for the verdict. A settlement leader from the Free Territories, a woman named Helena, with scars across half her face, stood first. "I came here expecting pretty lies from a city girl who doesn't understand the North," Helena said. "But you're not that. You understand exactly what you're asking us to risk, and you've proven it can work." She looked around the tent. The collective would be ashes without this alliance. We all know it. The question is whether we trust it to last. "Trust isn't given," Elara said. "It's earned. I'm asking for the chance to keep earning it, not because I need validation, because we need each other. The North is brutal enough without us making it worse by standing alone." Another leader stood, Garrett, from the collective. "I vote yes. Provisional acceptance, 1-year trial. If it works like she says, we make it permanent. If it doesn't, we walk away." One by one, the settlements voted. Not unanimously. Frontier people didn't do unanimous. But enough. More than enough. The Northern Territories Coalition was born in a tent full of suspicious survivors who decided, collectively, that maybe dying alone was worse than living together. Afterward, Reese found Elara outside, staring at stars that seemed closer here than they ever had in Ironvale. "You changed the North," Reese said. "You know that? We changed it. All of us." "No, you gave us a reason to try." Reese's voice was uncharacteristically soft. "Most people spend their lives surviving. You gave us something to build toward. That's rare." "I just did the math." "You did more than math. You gave us hope. And in the North, that's worth more than gold." Reese clasped her shoulder. "Thank you." She left, and Elara stood alone with the weight of what she'd built settling around her. She wasn't invisible anymore. Wasn't the girl no one saw. She was the woman who'd united territories, who'd turned chaos into coalition, who'd proven that intelligence and courage were worth more than violence. The girl who'd left Ironvale to disappear had become someone impossible to ignore. 2 months later, a letter arrived from Ironvale, her father's handwriting on the envelope, careful and uncertain. Elara opened it in her office, an actual office now, in the expanded administration building. The depot had grown, prosperity bringing new people, new opportunities. Her 20% had become actual wealth, more than she'd ever expected to have. The letter was short. "Elara, your mother wanted me to write. Serena's marriage has ended. Marcus left her for someone in his father's firm. The scandal has been brutal. She's devastated. Your mother thinks you'd want to know. I'm not sure if you would, but I'm writing anyway. The money you sent saved us. More than saved us. Your father's business is thriving again. Because of you. I never thanked you properly for that. For a lot of things. I don't expect you to come back. You've built something remarkable in the North. The reports reach even here, the coalition, the alliances, your name on contracts we receive. You've done what I spent my life trying to do. You've made the Vance name matter. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. But I'm saying it now. Your father, Henry Elara, read it twice, waiting for the satisfaction or vindication or whatever she was supposed to feel. Instead, she felt distant, like reading about strangers whose problems no longer touched her. She'd wanted this once, wanted her father's pride, her family's recognition, wanted proof that she mattered, but she didn't need it anymore. She had proof every day, in the depot running smoothly, in the coalition holding strong, in the people who looked to her not because she was pretty or convenient, but because she was capable. And in Ronan, who chose her every day without needing a reason beyond wanting to. She set the letter aside and went to find him. He was in the training yard, working with new guards, teaching them to read terrain, spot threats, survive. He looked up when she approached, something in his expression asking if she was all right. "My father wrote," she said. "Serena's marriage fell apart. Marcus left her." "How do you feel about that?" "Nothing, mostly. Maybe a little sad for her, but not," she searched for words, "not like it matters to who I am anymore." "Good." Ronan wiped sweat from his face. "Because who you are has nothing to do with them." "I know." She smiled. "That's what I came to tell you. And to ask you something." "What?" "The coalition needs a permanent headquarters. Somewhere central, defensible, big enough to handle diplomatic meetings and trade negotiations." She paused. "I'm thinking we build it together. Not Ashmark Station. Something new. Something that's ours from the ground up." Ronan studied her. "That's a massive project." "Yes." "It'll take years." "Probably." "And you're asking me to commit to that? To you? To building a future here?" "Yes." Elara met his eyes without wavering. "I'm asking you to choose this. Not because you have to. Not because it's smart or strategic, just because you want to. Because we're better together than apart." Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the distance between them, cupped her face in his hands. "I was waiting for you to ask," he said. "Why didn't you ask first?" "Because you needed to choose me, not have me choose you. You spent your whole life being chosen or not chosen by people who didn't see you. I wanted you to be the one doing the choosing this time." Elara's throat tightened. "So that's a yes?" "That's a yes. To the headquarters. To the future. To you." He kissed her forehead, gentle despite his rough edges. "To all of it." They stood in the training yard holding each other while new guards practiced and the depot hummed with life around them. It wasn't a perfect moment. The wind was cold, they both smelled like work, and someone nearby was arguing about supply schedules. But it was real, and real was all they'd ever needed. 6 months later, construction began on Coalition Hall, a massive structure built into a hillside, designed to house negotiations, store records, and serve as the North's first permanent diplomatic center. Elara oversaw the logistics. Ronan handled security and construction. Together, they built something that would outlast them both. The girl who'd been invisible became the woman who shaped the North's future. The man who'd needed no one became the partner who chose her every day. And together they proved that strength wasn't about being perfect or polished or chosen by people who didn't matter. Strength was choosing yourself, building something worth protecting, and finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and decided you were worth the risk. Years later, when Coalition Hall stood complete and the Northern Territories had become a force even Ironvale respected, someone asked Elara if she regretted leaving her old life behind. She looked at Ronan beside her, at the hall they'd built, at the coalition of survivors who'd become something more. "No," she said simply, "I don't regret anything." Because the girl no one saw had become the woman no one could ignore, and she'd done it by refusing to stay invisible, by demanding to be seen, by building a life where being herself, sharp, fierce, uncompromising, wasn't a flaw. It was power. And power, Elara had learned, wasn't given. It was taken. One decision at a time, one refusal to disappear at a time, until the world had no choice but to look, and once they looked, they couldn't look away. She stood in Coalition Hall, surrounded by the future she'd built, and knew with perfect certainty she was exactly where she was meant to be. Visible, undeniable, finally, completely herself.